It was the bombshell that rocked not only the Brown family to its very foundation, but also caused shockwaves throughout the whole Sister Wives fan community. In 2015, Mary Brown, Cody's first wife, the woman who laid the groundwork for this whole plural family, confessed to what she called an emotional affair with a man she'd met on the internet. But the reality turned uglier than anybody could have envisioned. That individual was not who he said he was. He was a woman, a catfish, and the consequences were merciless. For Mary, it was a public embarrassment of the worst kind, a very personal error she was compelled to replay before millions of spectators. Cody's reaction? He said he could never forgive the transgression. He gazed at Mary and stated, "I can't be in a relationship with someone who isn't faithful to me." You may have been misled, but you decided to play along. He cast the scandal as a last judgment, contending that their marriage was never a marriage, that trust had been irreparably ruined, and that there was simply nothing to restore. At that instant, he turned Mary's error into a life sentence, not merely a momentary mistake. Hey, Sister Wives fam, and welcome to the channel once again. Now, most of us thought we knew this tale. We figured it was merely about Mary's error and Cody's devastation, an easy tale of betrayal and punishment. But what if I were to tell you that the real truth behind the scenes is so much more incendiary than TLC ever let you know? What if I were to tell you that the true story might not only blow up the Brown family's hard-built reputation, but rattle the very foundations of reality TV itself? Today, we're revealing a bombshell, one that changes everything we thought we knew about this family. So, if you think the truth should come out, if you think justice for Mary has been overdue for years, then do me a favor. Like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Because trust me when I tell you, you won't want to miss a moment of this deep dive. Okay, let's get to it. Whispers have been emanating out of Flagstaff for weeks now. Whispers from the local legal community, whispers too insistent to be dismissed. Our station has been uncovering those rumors, and through sources close to the matter, we can now begin piecing together the picture of what might actually be going on behind closed doors. And it's staggering. According to insider reports, Mary Brown has filed a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against Cody Brown. But here's the shocking part. It's not about property. It's not about splitting assets from their so-called spiritual divorce. No, these alleged charges cut much deeper. We're talking defamation of character and the intentional infliction of emotional distress. Take a moment and absorb that. This isn't about Coyote Pass. This isn't about dirt to be split or property lines. This is a woman standing up and declaring, for almost a decade, Cody Brown methodically tore down her reputation, eroded her self-esteem, and used their reality TV show to make her a public spectacle, all for his own gratification and ratings. So, let's dissect this, because the stakes of these allegations are high. First off, defamation. Legally, defamation is when someone disseminates false information that damages someone else's reputation. Now, you may be thinking, wasn't Cody just speaking from his heart? Isn't that free speech? And usually, in a private discussion, sure, that may work. But Mary's lawyers, according to our sources, are presenting a very different case. They're contending that what Cody did extended far more than a matter of private opinion. He wasn't merely stating, "I feel hurt." He was taking a national stage, episode after episode, proclaiming as fact that Mary was unfaithful, dishonest, deceitful, and ethically compromised. Think about the context here. This wasn't a tweet. This wasn't an argument behind closed doors. This was a highly produced, heavily edited TLC show where Cody was presented as the patriarch, the central voice of authority. His words weren't just venting, they carried massive weight. With fans, with the wives, with the public. And Mary's lawyers are reportedly arguing that these repeated statements directly destroyed her personal brand and professional opportunities. Because let's be real, Mary is more than a reality TV star. She's an entrepreneur. Her LuLaRoe. Sales rely solely on her reputation, her credibility, the parasocial connection she establishes with her consumers and recruits. Now, question yourself this. If you're tuning into Sister Wives on Sunday evening, and you witness Cody, her own husband, the purported patriarch of her family, accusing her of being a liar, a cheater, and someone who can't be trusted, would you still feel at ease being part of her entourage? Would you purchase her merchandise? Mary's legal team is alleging the answer is a hard no. They're saying Cody's televised character assassination cost her millions in lost income, recruitment, and future opportunities. This wasn't just marital strife. This, they argue, was sabotage. A deliberate attempt to destroy her business and livelihood under the disguise of family drama. But that's only half of it. The second piece is even darker. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Now, this is one of the most difficult legal claims to establish, but if Mary is successful, It could lift the veil on the toxic dynamics that have characterized the Brown family over the years. To succeed, you must establish that the behavior was so extreme and outrageous that it transgressed all boundaries of decency, something that would inflict severe emotional trauma upon a reasonable person. So what is Mary alleging? Per these reports, her lawsuit outlines a disturbing years-long history of psychological abuse, with the TV show itself as the main vehicle. Cody didn't just reference the catfish here and there, he supposedly made it into a club he could swing it at her time and time again, year after year, reminding her and the rest of the world of her worst moment until it became the only thing that people thought when they heard her name. Let's piece the supposed evidence together. First, the power imbalance. Cody wasn't merely her husband. In their fundamentalist religious hierarchy, he was the patriarch, the guy with all the power, spiritual, financial, and emotional. He had control over affection, family life, and appearances on television. This was never a battle between equals. Second, the public arena, and that's the tragic detail. Cody didn't just mention this in therapy or in an off-camera argument, he made it her defining trait on national television. Every time Mary walked out of the house, every time she opened social media, she was reminded to relive it. To the world, she wasn't Mary Brown, the businesswoman, the mother, the sister wife. She was the catfish wife, because Cody ensured that she couldn't escape it. Third, the repetition. The lawsuit supposedly chronicles more than 50 individual on-air occurrences over 7 years in which Cody pulled the scandal back up. To embarrass her, to distance himself from her, to justify his aloofness. He kept the wound open, intentionally, so the cameras could record it repeatedly. And fourth, the contractual trap. This is maybe the most callous aspect. Mary couldn't simply leave. She was contracted to TLC. Year by year, she had to sit there on the couch, next to the guy destroying her, as the cameras shot and the checks cleared. According to the lawsuit, the show was her prison and Cody was the warden making money off. Her misery. So you put it all together. This isn't merely about a marriage breaking down. This is about a woman claiming decades of public broadcast emotional abuse rebranded as entertainment. Now imagine this. Inside the courtroom, the stakes are sky high. On one side, you've got Cody Brown sitting beside high-powered attorneys, bolstered by network lawyers, looking, according to one insider, arrogant and untouchable. On the other side, Mary sits calm, composed, with a legal team specializing in reputational damage and abuse cases. And then the trial begins. Mary's team wastes no time delivering their first devastating blow. They unveil what they call Exhibit A, the humiliation montage. Imagine it. The lights go down. The jury is quiet. A giant screen comes alive. Mary's attorney speaks up. "Your Honor, we'd like to enter Exhibit A." And for what feels like an eternity, 15 long minutes, the jury sits there watching clip after clip of sister wives, a timeline in chronological order of Cody's televised tirades. They start with the raw early interviews. Then they get worse. They observe him spurning a kiss from her on their anniversary vacation. They observe him telling a counselor he can't move on because she was dishonest. They observe him, years later, smugly declaring on national TV that he doesn't feel married to her anymore. They observe him telling Christine that he remains with Mary out of sympathy, as if she is a burden carrying him back. Clip by clip, the trend becomes unmistakable. And from one source within the courtroom, the impact was sobering. Jurors cringed. Some shook their heads. One juror apparently had tears streaming down her cheeks. Meanwhile, Cody remained stone-faced, sitting through his greatest hits. But, for the first time, without his ability to script it. To hammer the point home, Mary's team then calls a media expert. This expert testifies that Cody's relentless commentary, broadcast to millions, didn't just damage Mary's marriage, it branded her entire public identity. He turned her into the disloyal wife, the pathetic first wife, a caricature. She could never escape. They submitted evidence that her social media sentiment collapsed, negative media coverage ballooned, and her Q-score, a gauge of likability in the public eye, stalled after 2015. And here's the kicker. While Mary's reputation burned, the show's ratings soared, particularly during episodes where their conflict was front and center. And the expert's final chilling statement? Mr. Brown was not a husband working through personal pain. He was an abuser curating a narrative. He wasn't playing the part of a grieving husband working things out. He was playing the part of a TV producer, and his show wasn't reconciliation or healing or love. His show was his wife's ongoing humiliation. The courtroom was in shocked silence. But if you believed that the humiliation montage was bad, the next bit of evidence took the case to genuinely explosive levels. Mary's legal team then presented the sworn deposition of a therapist, not Nancy, the familiar counselor TLC paraded. on the show, but an independent expert specializing in narcissistic abuse and trauma. This professional had never sat down with either Cody or Mary in person. Instead, she was tasked with reviewing hundreds of hours of sister wives footage, examining the family dynamic with a clinical eye. And her findings? They were nothing short of chilling. The deposition was read out in court, and the words, "this" therapist used left the jury visibly shaken. She identified Cody's behavior as textbook narcissistic abuse, and in particular cited his use of sustained public shaming as a form of coercive control. She referred to it as weaponized trauma. Consider that phrase for a moment. According to her testimony, Cody took Mary's genuine wound, the catfishing incident, and rather than allowing space for healing, he deliberately kept it open. He used that trauma like a leash, pulling on it whenever he wanted to control her emotions, her behavior, and even her place within the family hierarchy. Then she presented another unsettling term, strategic withholding. The therapist highlighted hundreds of instances on the show where Cody withheld love, warmth, and even the slightest kindness gestures. Not by mistake, but by design. This wasn't the passive dismissal of a man who had fallen out of love. She said, this was an intentional, strategic move aimed at keeping Mary in limbo between hope and heartbreak. Never really loved, but never really free. And then there was perhaps the most damning critique, public gaslighting. The therapist said that Cody wasn't merely claiming to his wives or his entourage that Mary was the problem. He was conditioning millions of viewers to view her as the villain of her own narrative. Week after week, season after season, he packaged his rejection and cruelty as the natural consequence of her error, as opposed to what it actually was, an abusive pattern of manipulation. Consider the psychological impact of not just being gaslit in secret, but of being gaslit publicly before the world. The deposition concluded with a haunting summary. Given the public platform, the glaring power imbalance, and the relentless duration of his tactics, Cody Brown's behavior clearly met the standards, both clinical and legal, for conduct that would predictably cause severe emotional distress, anxiety, and even complex PTSD. He didn't just break Mary's heart. The lawsuit argues that he systematically tried to break her spirit, and he did it with all of us watching. But here's where it gets even more sinister, because what follows isn't something you'll find nicely typed into a court document. This is a sole theory that has emerged from within the Sister Wives show universe itself, a theory introduced to us by an anonymous source who came forward for their own safety. And if this theory holds water, it completely rewrites everything we believed about the catfish scandal. We all heard the public narrative. Mary fell in love with a guy named Sam. He was not who he said he was. The truth emerged, and the family had to live with the consequences. That's the script the cameras sold to us. But our source says the timeline could be much darker. That, according to this source, Cody and some of the production crew supposedly knew that Sam was really a woman weeks before Mary found out herself. Weeks. Stop right here and think about what that implies. If that's true, then when Cody and the producers heard the horrible news, they didn't waste any time trying to protect Mary. They didn't take her aside to insulate her from hurt. No. What they witnessed wasn't a family crisis. They witnessed ratings gold, a plot so shocking, so sensational, it was better than anything they could have written. And far from halting it, they reportedly let it run, fully aware Mary was about to walk straight into ruin, all in the name of television. So if this theory is correct, then Cody's betrayal was not about an emotional affair. It was about complicity, about being a cog in the machine that served up his wife to the wolves for profit, his 7-year reign of punishment, his icy anger. Was it ever actually about hurt? Or was it a deliberate act, tightly scripted to keep viewers attached? Because, according to one media critic, conflict between Cody and Mary wasn't merely personal. It was the show's largest cash cow. This theory recontextualizes Cody as not a hurt husband, but a calculating co-star. A person who saw his wife's pain not as tragedy, but as opportunity. A business partner making money off of her misery. And if that is accurate, what else have we, the watchers, not seen? With the humiliation montage, the therapist's blistering deposition, and this dark insider theory swirling through the air like smoke, Mary's legal team rested their case. Cody's defense, on the other hand, looked weak by comparison. His lawyers relied on free speech claims, maintaining that he was merely being himself, that he was expressing his own truth on a reality television show. They positioned him as a guy expressing genuine emotion about a failed marriage. But beside the evidence, it sounded hollow, nearly ridiculous. Then came the closing arguments. Mary's lawyer painted a vivid picture of a woman trapped in a decade-long cycle of televised abuse, begging the jury to hold Cody accountable for weaponizing his platform against her. Cody's lawyer countered with a harsher narrative, dismissing Mary as nothing more than a bitter, scorned wife looking to cash in on a family dispute. And then it was out of their control. The jury exited the courtroom. For the first time, the Brown family legacy's fate, and maybe the future of the ethics of reality TV itself, was in the hands of 12 ordinary citizens. Outside the courthouse in Flagstaff, there was pandemonium. There were vans filled with media. Reporters who used to write off sister wives as a sideshow now waited on the courthouse steps, thrusting microphones into the faces of anyone affiliated with the case. Overnight, this wasn't just a tabloid show. It was news. Pundits posed searing questions. Where is the dividing line between reality and exploitation? And is someone criminally culpable for ruining their spouse's reputation in order to fill TV shows? Inside, the tension was intolerable. One source reported Cody pacing around a private room, bravado at last shattered. His once commanding voice was now frantic. He was heard telling his attorneys, "They can't do this. It's just a TV show. I was being honest. This is my life." For once, Cody wasn't master of the narrative. Mary, on the other hand, was the epitome of composure. She sat with her lawyers, calmly drinking from a water bottle. She wasn't shaking. She wasn't walking back and forth. This wasn't about money for her. This was about restoring her dignity, her story, her truth. After 10 years of being defined by one misstep, she was finally restoring the story to a jury of her peers. 6 agonizing hours dragged by. 6 hours of painful deliberation. The jury watched the humiliation montage 3 times. They asked to have the therapist's deposition read back to them twice. They weren't messing around. They were considering every word, every clip, every charge. Then, at 4:15 p.m., the time finally arrived. A court officer appeared. "We have a verdict!" The courtroom erupted in shocked silence when Cody and Mary were called back in. They did not glance at one another. Cody's face was red, his jaw clenched in silence. Mary went straight ahead, calm and impenetrable. The jury marched in, neither party daring to look at them. The foreman, a middle-aged woman, held out a piece of paper to the bailiff, who gave it to the judge. The judge read it, his expression neutral, and then handed it back to the foreman to read to the court. "On Brown versus Brown," the judge spoke formally. "Madam Foreman, on the first count, defamation of character, how do you find?" The foreman took a deep breath, then gazed straight at Mary and then at Cody. Her voice echoed strong. "On the charge of defamation, we, the jury, find the defendant, Cody Brown, guilty." The room gasped as one. Cody flinched as if punched. His lawyers clasped his shoulders, holding him in place. Sources report he growled under his breath. "No way. This is a joke." Mary didn't jump up from her seat or raise her fists. She didn't grin. One tear rolled down her cheek, which she wiped away hastily. It was not the tear of triumph. It was the tear of release, the acknowledgement of pain she had borne silently for years. But the moment wasn't over. There was still the second most serious charge, intentional infliction of emotional distress, the one so notoriously hard to prove. The courtroom breathed as the judge addressed them once more. "On the second count," he said, "the charge of intentional infliction of emotional distress. How do you find?" The foreman didn't blink. She hesitated not. She stared at the paper, and then the room. Her voice was firm. "On the count of intentional infliction of emotional distress, we find the defendant liable." It was nothing less than a breathtaking total triumph for Mary Brown. Against all odds, she emerged from that courtroom having beaten the man who had defined and deformed her for over a decade. The jury, having listened to all the testimony and seen all the evidence, made it plain they weren't accepting Cody's alibis. They didn't view this as another nasty family battle conducted for the benefit of the cameras. No, they viewed it as what it really was, a matter of outright cruelty, a predator and prey, a manipulator and victim. And ultimately, they did believe Mary. But the actual question loomed large in the courtroom. How much would Cody owe for putting his wife through years of humiliation? What dollar amount could possibly be assigned to a decade of agony, shame, and emotional ruin? When the judge came back to announce the damages, tension crackled in the courtroom. And then, with a firm voice that bore the power of justice, the figure was announced. And first, the jury spoke to the defamation charge, the manner in which Cody had mud-raked Mary's name, not only in private, but before 1 million or so onlookers. For all that damage to her reputation, they granted her $500,000, $500,000. That award wasn't merely for restitution, it was confirmation. It was the jury recognizing that Cody's unflattering characterization of Mary as being broken and untrustworthy had undermined her business pursuits, poisoned her reputation, and deprived her of opportunities. They suspected what many of us had long suspected, that his words weren't innocuous. They were deliberate blows designed to kill her credibility. Then there was the hit that landed like a sledgehammer. The second count, intentional infliction of emotional distress, the one that's notoriously hard to prove. The one that asked the jury to decide that Cody's actions weren't just cold or careless, but that they were outrageous, extreme, and inexcusable. And the verdict? They believed Mary once more. For the years of public suffering, for wounds that were never permitted to close, for the unremitting campaign of psychological warfare, the jury gave her $1 million in punitive damages. That amount was not about making Mary whole, it was about punishment. A money reckoning intended to send a message not only to Cody, but to all other individuals in authority who believe they can weaponize another person's suffering for financial gain. It was the jury stating unequivocally that what Cody had done was abhorrent and it could not be allowed. In total, Cody now owed Mary $1.5 million. A staggering total, one that would most certainly shatter his finances and rattle his meticulously built world to its very foundations. Within the courtroom, the setting was indelible. Cody remained motionless, white-faced and hollow-eyed, looking into space as if his whole world had just imploded. The bravado he had thrown for so long, the condescending superiority he donned in interviews and tell-alls, it all disappeared. This wasn't the patriarch dictating the story. This was a man divested of authority, divested of dignity, with only the burden of his own deeds to bear. And still, the worst blow wasn't inflicted by the fickle jury. It was inflicted by the judge himself. Prior to adjourning the case, the judge delivered what can only be termed a verbal destruction, so biting, it will be read in law school and network boardrooms for decades to come. He labeled Cody's conduct for precisely what it was, a deliberate disregard for Mary's dignity. He dismissed the notion that Cody was simply expressing his honest feelings in the context of a reality show. The judge wasn't buying that one. This wasn't about honesty, it was about exploitation. He ruled that Cody hadn't been just a husband struggling to work through marital issues. He was a business partner taking advantage of his co-star's worst error for the sake of storyline. Year after year, Cody kept the catfish event fresh, not to heal, but to wound. He used it like a psychological club, dangling it above Mary's head to reinforce her shame and his control. He benefited financially and emotionally from her pain, using the story to maintain himself in control and her on the decline. And the judge did not stop there. He made a line in the sand for the whole industry, cautioning networks and producers that this ruling should serve as a wake-up call. A contract on a reality show, he noted, is not a permit to ruin someone's life. Signing up for a program doesn't mean signing away your right to bear dignity. And maybe the most condemning line of all, Cody Brown didn't just cross the line between documenting reality and manufacturing cruelty, he built a home on the other side of it. That one sentence changed everything people suspected for so long. It was the vindication that Mary never expected to get. For 7 years of endless torment, viewers had witnessed her being ridiculed, rejected, and gaslighted in the name of entertainment. And yet, it took a court of law to label that trauma with a name: psychological abuse. Outside the courthouse, the atmosphere was pandemonium. Cody, using dark glasses as camouflage, pushed through reporters, broken and silent. For once, he said nothing. No passionate monologue, no justifications, no grand patriarchal display. Silence. His swagger had dissipated, replaced with the vacant stare of a man on the edge of financial disaster and public shame. Mary, on the other hand, came out with quiet dignity. Surrounded by her lawyers, she didn't have to say much. Her attorney spoke on her behalf, addressing the media. Today, Mary Brown reclaimed her voice. And in those few words, decades of silence, shame, and suppression were reversed. Mary was no longer Cody's evil other. She was no longer the forgotten first wife relegated to wilting in the shadows. She was a survivor, a winner, a woman who had taken back her power. But if Mary's triumph was absolute, the same could not be said of the rest of the Brown family. The ripple effects of this verdict spread immediately. Christine, according to sources, was among the first to telephone Mary, over the moon and cheering her on. "You did it," she apparently said to her. "Finally stood up to him. For all of us." Christine jokingly spoke about a celebratory escape with Mary and Janelle, making this not only Mary's victory, but a victory for all the women who had been under Cody's control for so long. Janelle, being her practical self, was more subdued but no less relieved. Though she was concerned about the economic impact, specifically how it would hit family properties such as Coyote Pass, she acknowledged that there was a certain cosmic justice. Cody's unrestrained actions hurt everyone, particularly the kids, and now the universe itself had taken its revenge on him. And then, naturally, there was Robin. The ruling was like a bomb exploding in her meticulously built world. Sources say she was furious at Cody, yelling that he had destroyed everything. For Robin, it was not just a matter of money. It was the collapse of her dream. The dream of the idyllic patriarch guiding his family toward a mansion on Coyote Pass. That dream was over, drowned in an avalanche of legal bills and public humiliation. And for once, even Cody could not shield her from the repercussions. But the Brown family was not the only one reeling. TLC itself was in a state of crisis. The judge had specifically berated them, and the production team behind Sister Wives was now in a panic. We learned about a behind-the-scenes memo directing a shutdown of production and an ethics review from top to bottom. Why? Because this decision created a chilling precedent. If networks could be held responsible for knowingly profiting from emotional abuse, then the whole business model of Comedy Central's reality shows was at stake. For Cody, the future now seems dark. He's financially cornered. His reputation is ruined. No longer the imperfect but likable patriarch fans agonized over, is he now an abuser, branded in the cold glare of a courtroom? Rebuilding from there is all but impossible. The probable result? He and Robin pull back deeper into solitude, stuck together in a resentful fortress of declining resources. But for Mary, the future has never been brighter. Yes, she now possesses the money, but more notably, she possesses her dignity. She has her name restored. She is free to cut all remaining loose ends with the Brown Empire and forge her own path. Her businesses will flourish, her autonomy will expand, and for the first time in decades, she can live free of Cody's shadow. This trial was never actually about the online affair in 2015. It was about all that came afterward. The years of suffering, the shame being weaponized, and the money made off her pain. Mary was once the Sister Wives scapegoat, portrayed as the broken one, the reject, the issue. But now, following this verdict, she exits with a new moniker, Survivor, Victor, and the woman who took on Cody Brown and prevailed. So, what's your take? Did Mary at last receive the closing she deserved? Was $1.5 million sufficient for what she went through, or were the damages even higher? And what about Sister Wives in general? Can TLC ever hope to rebound from this shock? Or has this ruling altered the face of reality TV permanently? Sound off down in the comments. I want to hear all your theories. This is one of the most epic stories we've ever done, and the conversation is only just getting started. Thanks for tuning in to this dive deep. If you appreciate this type of reporting, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss an update. Until next time, stay strong, stay curious, and remember, sometimes the fight for truth doesn't happen on a TV set. It happens in a courtroom.